welcome to the Gastric Health Show. My name is Dawn Boxall, and we are here again this week discussing more topics. It kind of evolved around bloating, and we're just kind of dig into the different causes of bloating and just kind of go through these each week to help you identify maybe what could be causing your bloating issues. So this week, our title is BAM, I'm bloated again. But BAM has a different meaning for me in this episode, where it actually is an acronym for what we are going to discuss. So first off, let's kind of discuss what is bloating. And bloating is just that full, tight, or swollen abdomen. And you can feel really distended, it can be hard, it can be painful. Sometimes it's really obvious on the outside where your belly looks really distended, almost like you're pregnant. For some, you just feel like it's bloated on the inside, but you really can't notice it on the outside by much. So it's definitely a sign or something that you want to pay attention to. You should not be having bloating after every time you eat. It's not normal to feel bloated all the time. Now, I would say to some degree we're all going to experience some bloating. It is when it just never goes away. And it usually accompanies additional symptoms. So that's where you have to kind of work with someone skilled in really understanding bloating and, the gut health and that whole dynamic of how digestion works, and help you kind of unravel it so you can figure out, why am I so bloated all the time and why am I having these additional symptoms? So really, what we're talking about with BAM is bile acid malabsorption. And this is just where you have an increase of bile acids in the colon, which then it causes a whole bunch of different symptoms. So before I go into all the symptoms, I do want to discuss what are bile acids and why do we need them. But bile acids are made in the liver. We store them in the gallbladder. So if you don't have a gallbladder, then you are just going to be having this light trickle of the bile into your intestines. And then if you eat a large volume of fat and your body acknowledges that, then you might get a little bit more extra at one time, kind of a dump type of effect. But bile acids emulsify fats. So why is this important? I always like the example that you probably did in science class, where you have a glass of water, you put some oil, and then you add some dish detergent. You can watch the fat get dispersed into a whole bunch of little different fat molecules by just putting a drop of dish detergent in it. And that kind of shows you the same concept with bile. Bile will help emulsify that or break it down into finer particles, so then your body can absorb it and utilize it. It also aids in lipid absorption. So we need bile to break down the fat molecules into really tiny fine particles, but then we also need it to help us absorb the fat that we're eating in our diet. And without that, you would have fat malabsorption. So vitamins A, D, E, and K, you would be deficient in. So it's super important. So we need to make sure we have adequate amounts of bile so that they can do their jobs. But we don't need too much. We need kind of the right balance. So let's talk about the symptoms of the bile acid malabsorption. You can have diarrhea, like a loose, watery diarrhea. You can also be constipated. So it makes it a little confusing, but I would say the bile acid diarrhea, or BAD, is what some of it's identified as well. So you got BAM of bile acid malabsorption, or BAD, bile acid diarrhea. So that's very common, but you can also have constipation. So that makes it a little complicated to identify. But you get bloating in both of those. You can also have fecal incontinence. So what this means is you don't have any control over your bowel movements, and they hit you very urgent and frequently. So those are some other issues that come with it, and accidents can be an issue where you don't have the control, it hits you out of nowhere, and you can't even make it to the bathroom, so you have accidents. Gas, so this is another thing that you'll experience a lot of gas. Abdominal pain, kind of like I talked about, this painful, hard, bloated, swollen abdomen. Greasy stools, so you can actually see fat droplets in the toilet, and that can be a sign of this bile acid malabsorption. And then the stools are sometimes hard to flush. So those are some very common symptoms of the bile acid malabsorption. So if you are experiencing the bloating with some of these, then guess what? You might want to talk to your doctor about the bile acid malabsorption, or BAM. There are 3 different types of BAM. The type 1 is usually related to a structural issue. So maybe you've had surgery, either urgent surgery, like an emergent type of thing where you were in an accident, or it could even be bariatric surgery or other intestinal surgeries that you've had to have surgery on your intestines. Type 2 is idiopathic, which really they don't understand. They think that is maybe more of a genetic link. But that is kind of evolving as we learn more about genetics. But you kind of have an overproduction of bile, and that's why you're having these symptoms. The third type is kind of a secondary. It is you're having this bile acid malabsorption secondary to another cause, which could be your gallbladder was removed, you have chronic pancreatitis, you have celiac disease, or you have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So those make it you more prone. So if you have if your gallbladder has been removed, which is very common after weight loss surgery, very common after pregnancies, common in females. There are lots of people who end up losing their gallbladder. So that is a driver of why someone would have this bloating or this bile acid malabsorption. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that is another thing that we see a high amount or an increase in after bariatric surgery. So that is another thing to consider as to why am I having this issue with bloating or constipation or diarrhea, and it could be because of the bacterial overgrowth. So keeping all that in mind, I just want you to, again, have some good information, have a good talk track with your doctor when you are trying to figure out, why am I bloated? Because no one should be bloated all the time after your meals consistently or chronically. It may happen every now and then based on some of the foods or just kind of your environment or things going on. Occasionally, I think that's, part of life. But if that's continually happening and you're continually feeling pretty miserable after a meal and you're feeling like the bloating is getting worse and worse and belly distension, those type of things, it's getting unbearable, I would not wait. That is definitely something that you want to talk to your doctor, talk to your bariatric team. There are so many things you can do in helping you resolve these symptoms and get this under control, so that one, you're not ignoring all of this and just thinking it's no big deal, but you're addressing maybe the root cause of what's going on. So I hope you enjoyed this week's topic, and if you are struggling with bloating, make sure to talk to your doctor about BAM being a cause, especially if you've had your gallbladder removed or you've been diagnosed with celiac or SIBO, or any other surgical procedure that you've had done in your stomach. So then that way they can rule all of the causes out. So hope that's helped. You guys have a great week. Bye-bye.